Hey, everybody. Welcome to this week's edition of the GCNC Worldview. I am Chris Day, your host, co-founder of the Global Cannabis Network Collective, and excited this week to be able to talk to someone that sort of bridges the gaps of these discussions that exist between cannabis and hemp, and what does that mean in North America, and what does it mean globally, and how do we move all of these different channels forward? It's become a more and more intriguing conversation over the last several years in particular. And Eben Sumner, CEO of Casco Bay Hemp Company, welcome. Thanks so much for joining us today. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you so much, Chris, and it's definitely a pleasure to be here with you. GCNC's been a really nice eye opener for me to be able to get traction with other people that are as invested in cannabis and passionate about it as I am. It's been very inspiring, I would say, in a rather uninspiring industry at times. Misery loves company, and GCNC is excellent company.
Well, I appreciate that, and we're trying to minimize the misery and maximize the opportunity. So it's great. Hey, for a second before we go down this path, let's talk about the signs behind you. I always love to see the references to the past as we try and explore the future.
Yeah, yeah, this is always a good talking piece. Yeah, right behind me I have the Reefer Madness posters, both of them. And I've got the prints that are always behind me on my screen, and they usually induce some pretty good conversation and at least some laughter and again a little bit of commiserating.
Yes.
But yeah, those are there for to make me smile in the morning and at least see how far we've come from Prohibition days.
Yeah, no, it's good. And I mentioned before we got on the one behind you and to the left I have in my office upstairs as well. So it's we do an event every year in Vegas. You were able to attend this one, and we try and highlight stories. And it's been nice to see the devices that were used to misinform for so many years to now be used in ways that show sort of the idiocy of the past and the opportunity for us to educate people more effectively with research and actual forward progress in the future. So, and you're certainly doing that. I mean, I'd love for you to tell us about Casco Bay Hemp Company, but you're also doing a ton of work in policy. We had a chance to talk about that the other day, and I mean, moving things across the US, but also in multiple markets around the world.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it is such a fast moving, rapid industry with emerging markets all the time. And then, as you and I both know, as far as policy goes, unfortunately, the rest of the world, is kind of following in the United States footsteps, which we all have learned are not exactly the best footsteps. So thankfully, we've been connecting to other emerging markets and being able to speak to regulators and department heads and just to basically please ignore the United States and learn learn from our
Learn,
mistakes.
don't
Yeah,
ignore, learn from.
they
Yeah,
learn from exactly.
yeah.
Yeah. And it's crazy because you have, the United States who essentially created this market, and now we have this patchwork of compliance based on the different states that are choosing to participate in either medical um, or adult use programs, and then you've got another patchwork of compliance across the globe. And then we see kind of a disparity between the growing between the United States and the rest of the compliant or at least liberalized countries. You
Mhm.
kind of see if you were to put those in their own bucket, you see progress with standards like CGMP for manufacturing, GACP for cultivating, and this is falling in line with the rest of the world when it comes to import export. Um, However, the United States is obviously still, dragging their feet or mired, I would say, mired and all the different things that are happening. And so that's kind of creating a disparity when it comes to having the ability to export from the United States and being able to play on the global market.
Yeah. Yeah, and well, I think we're going to be mired for a bit longer for sure. There's nothing on the radar right now that makes me feel like that's going to change. And so what I've been telling people is let's just acknowledge that, and we don't have to be happy about it, but we have to build successful companies in spite of it and move forward, right? So talk to me a little bit about Casco Bay and what, sort of what you guys do and what the business is all about.
Sure. Yeah, we started off basically in 2018, right off the bat when CBD was descheduled. And we started making tinctures. And that's basically the very basics that we started at. Since then, we've basically noticed just out of necessity what, people coming to us are asking for. And it's typically, hey, I have a good idea. It's a unique product. It's not on the market. This is it. What do we do? And so back in 2018, I didn't have all the steps, I guess, to be able to provide. So it was like, well, you have to take your idea and formulate over here. And then once that's formulated, then you have to scale that formula. And then there's product development and business development and on and on. And so I just kind of started adding these services to be able to help people take an idea and go all the way through a viable product right to the shelf. So innovation to shelf essentially. And we're able to do that now, which is pretty exciting. To go, right, we get the craziest ideas too. So it's really fun to work on some of these products and get them to market when they are so unique. So that's the exciting part. The export part, we've just started to build uh, relationships with countries that are, where we can actually work with their agencies, like Anvisa in Brazil, which is basically, the our version of FDA here in the US. And then around the world, everybody has their obviously their own government agencies. So we've been able to start to work with them either through pharmaceutical channels or through just agency channels, and then be able to provide documents and then bring in products into the country either through a doctor-patient prescription process or through a typical wholesale channel. So depending on where the products landed, that's going to be how the compliance works, and that's going to be how the supply chain works. So it's all
You know,
pretty interesting.
yeah, it is. And Evan, the way you describe it, it sounds like, hey, well, we started this business and then I just decided I'd fix all this stuff and here we are. But knowing a lot of people in this industry and the complexity of what you described, and then taking that to an international level, um, that's a set of skills, my friend, that few people have. And so talk to me a little bit about like how you conquered that, how you're conquering those hills, how do you get into these discussions where you can talk to these agencies and departments in different countries and successfully pull this off? Because I mean, I've done a lot of this myself also. It's hit and miss for me on the success rate, right? So
Yeah.
how'd you do that?
Yeah, well, you nailed it. It's hit or miss for sure. And it's really perseverance.
Yeah,
I probably say I bang my head against the wall. I probably use that term once or twice a week at least.
yeah,
And that's really it, is banging your head against the wall until you break through it. It's perseverance, it's numbers, talking to as many people as you can. Networking is massive. Really, to get throw your documents thrown onto a big stack in a country that has its own kind of business culture different than ours, and they all do. It's, that's no way that you're not going to get anywhere just being thrown into that stack of everybody else. So it's really networking and knowing, who's in that office, who can help us, or maybe it's hiring somebody that was retired from that office who still has connections. So it's really outside of the box thinking, lots of perseverance, lots of rejection, lots of not even rejection, just empty inboxes.
Yeah.
So just got to keep going after it and banging your head against the wall.
Well, and I think that that is a good piece of advice, I think, for everybody in this industry, because um, every now and then I lift my head up and look around and realize how many people that I've worked with over the years in the space have come in and shifted out and are now adjacent but not as involved. Because this is it's a great industry to be in. I am excited about global expansion. I'm excited about how market growth. And when you look at the stats at the macro level, it all is heading in the right direction. When you look at it in a day-to-day, got to get up and fight the fight to keep the business alive and moving, it can feel pretty intimidating and difficult. And I don't know too many folks who are in it just because they're in it for the money, because that is rarely the short term green dream is not real. So I always am appreciative of people who are willing to do that banging against the wall and figuring out, like, how do we do that, because it simplifies it for the next people as well. Like, hopefully it drives your business forward and create success there, but it also makes it just that much easier to get people to accept it in the future. And I want to make sure we talk about some of the other exploratory areas that you're working in, because um, what we've talked about so far, I think people are used to hearing about tinctures and product innovation and getting them into market, but you're sort of pushing the envelope on innovation and hemp usage as well. So you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. For me, cannabis has really, it's kind of been life for the past years and the past decade. And I kind of tend to look at life through that lens. And recently, we've been hearing a lot about PFAS and PFOS, and these are, coined forever chemicals, that are basically polluting our soil and groundwater. And, these are chemicals that were designed by Dow Chemical and 3M, and really basically used, and it was kind of a pretty effective chemical, which is good for the innovation side, but bad now that we've discovered that they're highly toxic, and have been used in practically everything you can imagine, right from paper drinking straws to razors that you shave your face with, to tires, cars on the road. So we've got this huge problem now with pollution, and going through my, using my cannabis lens, discovered that hemp, being such an amazing bioaccumulator, is actually useful in pulling these forever chemicals out of the soil, and also using proteins to harness, pulling them out of groundwater as well. So there's research that's been done. There's a lot of research that needs to be continued, and with I've started another company called Terragenics, and that's what we're doing. Is right now we're looking for grant money, and for collaborations to work on more research, trying to discover which genetics in which USDA plant hardiness zones would be the most effective in pulling out medium chain, long chain, and ultra short and short chain PFAS from the soil. So we're trying to basically bring the soil back to life that's been essentially shuttered because nothing can be grown or raised there. So this is another magical thing that cannabis does. Big surprise.
Yeah.
Um, and it's really, I think, has a lot of potential for future sustainable options to actually remediate the soil so we can use it again and kind of try to clean up.
Yeah.
And the nice thing is it's not just focused on PFAS, PFOS, but hemp being as amazing it is, will pull most things out of the ground because it is such a great scrub crop.
Yeah, most negative things out of the ground. It's a regenerative plant, right? So it pulls the things you don't want out, and it makes sure that the nutrients and things that you want in are actually there, which there aren't that many crops, y'all, that do that. And so it's great to have hemp as an option. Just out of feel free to answer or not this next question, Evan, but it occurs to me through this conversation, you're searching for grant money. We know this is true. In the pre-call we had the other day about this conversation, I mentioned, I've had clients in India that have used hemp to do soil remediation as well. But wouldn't it be nice if, Dow Chemical or 3M or these companies that make these that have made billions and billions and billions of dollars off of these, maybe invested a little bit in the cleanup part? So I think I know the answer already, but has any discussion ever been had around that? Has there been any interest in some of these folks saying, "Hey, we didn't know at the beginning, but now we're interested in trying to help clean it up"?
So you would think that would be the ethical and logical step,
Yeah,
but we're again talking about the United States and global corporations. So um, I would hope that that yes, that these companies would. I mean, I don't see we'll ever get an admittance from them saying, "Hey, oh yeah, this is a highly toxic product that we've infiltrated the entire planet with." I think that's too much liability for them.
yeah,
There can, especially now because they're, state governments, AG's offices are suing. So maybe this kicks things up where they have to, maybe they're mandated to, you know, subsidize some companies and clean up. I'm not quite sure, but I feel like that needle is moving for sure.
yeah. Well, if it can end up, um, right, the entire series of lawsuits around the opioid crisis has certainly pushed some things forward. It has not laid out the fact that cannabis can actually help with opioid addiction, right? It hasn't created that leap, but at least it acknowledged that opioid addiction is real. And there were companies that actively promoted it, basically. And then I think it's on us in this world to help educate that there are some other solutions that come from the space we're in the cannabis industry. My hope would be that as this continues, even if it's forced, instead of they just wake up and realize that it would be helpful, um, that perhaps these can be ongoing educational conversations with the folks that help make those decisions. But you're right; it's on all of us to continue to do that drumbeat and have those conversations where we can. But it's both a great academic and practical application discussion on really the opportunities for hemp in the long term. Because people think about it in these closed boxes, just like they do with cannabis. And this kind of discussion, I think, can help open the eyes for a lot of people that, if you do this, not only are you helping the soil, but you now have a great product that you can use in building homes and creating textiles and um, of course there's always a need for more research, but the initial research I think is quite supportive of these concepts.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, the smart and logical thing is seems to be what's clear and in front of us, and we have to push that. We have to continue doing what we're doing and push that forward, because we know that we're not going to have government support in it, not yet anyway. And we also know that we're trying to sneak a prohibited source material into an industry, in a huge market, I should say, instead of industry, that already has all these products. So, trying to make room for something that's more sustainable and relatively cheaper at this point, and will become cheaper as more production comes online. It makes sense, sounds logical, seems ethical, but again, that's not really how the game is played. So
Right.
we have to use our voices because that's what we have, and yeah, and keep pushing, and it'll work. We can look back and, again, like referencing the posters behind me, we couldn't even have this conversation back then. So at least we
Right.
can talk about it.
We can, and there are companies around the world actually making an impact and doing these things right now. Your companies, as an example, and there are governments around the world that are also waking up to this. There are some governments that are actively pushing for these types of programs. Doesn't really happen to be the ones in North America at the moment, but that does not mean that forward progress can't be made. I've been encouraged. Well, you and I spent time in Peru together last October, and I've been encouraged by the discussions there throughout South America. Europe is advancing the conversation, although not always advancing the practical application just yet. So I do think there's good hope for the future, and you know I've been I've now been in this space for close to a decade, and I figure, if I stick with it for another one or two, we probably won't finish the job, but I'm hopeful we can keep the keep the lights on and keep the job moving forward as much as possible. So,
No, that's a great point. And really, Chris, like entering into the international space and having conversations like has really reinvigorated me to, being stuck in the United States and just being mired in state policy and federal policy can be overwhelming. But you're absolutely right. Being able to get out, speak to countries and regulators that are looking at this as a serious opportunity is so refreshing. And to see these industries being set up properly, it's really it's been revitalizing, after again myself a decade in the industry as well, and just kind of being beaten down continuously by
yep.
state and federal. It's nice to get out there and see that, hey, this isn't what's happening everywhere necessarily. It's really a United States issue. And thankfully other countries are moving past.
Yeah, and I do say, like, um, we're not, for those listening, this is not a let's bash the US discussion. This is a looking at a global view of the industry and where progress is being made, and frankly looking at the discussions and the tools that we can uh, help expand around the world, and also hopefully provide additional insight and opportunity within our home countries. And, I have similar versions of this conversation on all kinds of different topics in almost every country, right? I was talking to some members in Germany a couple of weeks ago, and they were very frustrated by the lack of progress on the adult use space and the incessant stair stepping there. And so in their view, they were looking at the US market and the progress on the state by state model with adult use, saying, gosh, we're so far behind. And so I would encourage people to keep in mind that every market has its challenges, and in every instance, wherever you're at, there are certain aspects that are further along relative to others and other aspects that are way behind. Um, and it's important for all of us to keep that view, because that's what allows us all to pull together. And it's frankly the heart of the GCNC, is helping drive that knowledge share across countries and continents. Because otherwise, yeah, you get stuck in your silo and it feels really daunting until you
Yeah.
realize, all right, well, there is someone somewhere who has fixed this particular problem I have. They've got another one that I've figured out how to navigate. Let's work on that together. Um, it's part of why we had to build the thing in the first place, because yeah, I was frustrated and I wanted to create a space where we could really have those kinds of conversations, come together, drive policy where we could, help businesses create and get more products and more medicines and more opportunities, flowing around the world. So I love having these conversations because it encourages that. And I think it's great. So what's the immediate next step for you, like over the next couple of months as we head into 2025? What's primary activity on your horizon?
Yeah, so really we've basically been kind of slowly working on product development and reformulation of our current products. We've had a pretty, I'd say, busy growth period over the past year and a half, where a lot of this has been kind of back burner, but we're able to now really focus on that. So one of our one of our current projects is trying to create an adaptogen line. So we set our goals, our company goals 2 years ago on, let's look at wellness products, at these therapeutics, not just with cannabinoids, not just centered around cannabinoids, but let's make that one of several active ingredients. So that's kind of been our goals in the past couple of years, and that's been the thing. We're adding more cannabinoids to our formulations. We're trying to add adaptogens. We're trying to add other plant medicines, or at least compounds that will help with bioavailability, kind of looking at things on a cascading scale.
Mhm.
So, not just, I mean, everybody has the 200 milligrams of CBD, or however, tincture or capsule, but we're taking that further and trying to actually create um medicine, or at least therapeutics, focused on a specific malady.
Mhm.
And that's really, kind of moving towards a pharmaceutical model, or at least a compounding pharmaceutical model,
Mhm.
where we can offer, these specific formulations, and they can either be in a tincture, they can be in a suppository, they can be in an edible, trying to open that up for patients that can't consume one way or another, and have more specific needs based on what their doctors are prescribing.
Yeah. That's great. You will see in the coming months that we've developed some new partnerships that started to elevate last year, but where we're really, one of our main communication tracks for this year is going to be around research and innovation. And a large topic is on medicinal research. It's been interesting to me to see those webinars and conversations and other opportunities that we've created around these types of discussions have been the best attended uh, for the last 18 months. People are really intrigued by how do we advance this discussion past THC, CBD, CBG, and what does it all mean? And what else can I put together to really make me function better as a human and healthier? So I'm going to look forward to that. And as we build this conversation, we'll have to have you come back here later in the year, see how that's coming along. And also, let's keep conversations both publicly and behind the scenes at the GCNC focused on this evolution in the hemp space on soil rejuvenation, because to me that changes the world in a whole lot of ways, and really helps move us forward in more sustainable, environmentally friendly, and frankly probably cheaper and more profit margins for people too on the business side. So it's a win-win-win.
Mhm.
Eben, thanks so much for coming today. Everybody out there in podcast land, thanks so much for listening. And if you haven't subscribed, please do subscribe. Eben, if people want to reach out to you, how do they reach you?
Sure, yeah, they can get a hold of me on LinkedIn, Eben Sumner, or you can look up Casco Bay Hemp. You can also get a hold of me on, yeah, probably LinkedIn's the best way. We do have Facebook, we have Instagram, we've got TikTok, all those fun things. But if you want to reach out to me, that would be the best.
Perfect. Thanks so much for coming. And thanks, everybody. Until next time, have a great week. And we'll talk to you next time on the GCNC Worldview.
Thanks.